We're now joined by Professor Awa Traoré, who's an oceans and plastics campaigner for Greenpeace Africa. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us with you.
All right, your thoughts and initial reaction about this announcement of this huge amount, $249 billion to fight climate change.
It's naturally good news because in the current state of the climate crisis, any regional efforts or political decision made to reverse the negative climate trends to elevate the sufferings of African population is positively welcome. We are happy about that. However, it's important, I think, to understand that we are still far from the goal or the ideal, because if we just take the case of climate adaptation, according to United Nations Environment Programme, the annual cost of adaptation in developing countries, currently estimated at $70 billion, will rise to $300 billion by 2030. And 500 billion by 2050. So this is just to let you know that this is for adaptation. And while we know that key priorities in the African continent out of this adaptation include more efforts on climate finance, ambitious NDCs, market mechanisms, transparency, mitigation commitments, to meet. It is a great leap, I would say, for West African countries, ECOWAS, and it's good to see the region gathering around a climate change strategy plan. And perhaps I will just end by saying that on a climate justice lens, we think that developed countries must commit to closing their pre-2020 climate finance gap of 100 billions, because that amount must be the floor, not the ceiling. And ongoing efforts must be made to sort of identify and meet the needs and priorities of developing countries, especially when West African known to contribute the least to greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about financing because it's one thing to pledge, one thing to promise, and what we know sadly in the past from other initiatives, whether it's commitment to education, commitment to agriculture, the promises are hardly ever fulfilled. But we have an emergency here, we're running out of time. Are you confident that these commitments will be fulfilled, or is this going to be another hard slog to try and get the countries to show up as promised?
I think it's a good initiative because it's a regional policy that is sort of making sure that measures will be compatible with Paris Agreement. So in that lens, yeah, we can hope for better, but I think that with the harmful effect, of climate change that are dramatic, like you've been saying, in so many places in the world, Africa has not been spared the climate menace. And so the West African context you have seen in the report includes rising sea levels, coastal degradations, and erosions. They mention about the 56% of the coastlines. Extreme, to that you have extreme events having food security impacts, health impacts related to warmer temperatures. You have adverse consequences of climate change that are concentrates in our regions, which are relatively hot climates and where disproportionately large numbers of low-income countries are located. So we need to hope about a brighter future with this. But I think, of course, consistency and coherence will set the tone of how we move forward towards the implementation of this climate change strategy throughout the West African region.
Yeah, and the next issue again, implementation. So a regional strategy is critical because climate doesn't pick on countries and say, I'm going to skip Niger and cross over to Côte d'Ivoire. It's going to be the whole region. However, when you look at the region, you've got countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, that are struggling with real issues such as insurgency, insecurity. Will they be able to be part of a climate change strategy when security might be their top priority?
I think in all cases, the whole West African countries needs to be part of this, and thanks to this regional policy that is really coming at an urgent moment, a hectic moment, I would even tempted to say. And I think also with the COVID pandemic, you name the security issues, food security, strengthening livelihoods of West African people. It's very important, to basically build on these regional strategies. But of course, the difficulty with sorts of lies around making sure that, national versus regional policies are going to be fully or well harmonized in order to make sure that basically we take this question very seriously. And that's basically the reason why I think I have, if you look at these mitigations efforts, these adaptations measures in general, what is important is how we explore countries' socio-economic resilience plans, as for example, the results of COVID, to consistently implement sustainable climate actions. And so, yes, this means taking the issues of security, the issues of livelihoods, and various other issues as to basically be able to co-create an effective and efficient climate change strategy. I think the multi-party sorts of relationship building and co-creation will determine how successful implementing such a regional climate change strategy basically would look like.
Well, let's
and
talk.
So yes, countries will definitely need to make additional efforts. Mali, Niger, and other West African countries.
Let's talk a little bit about those strategies. What does mitigation and adaptation look like in West Africa going forward? What should be key ingredients to these regional interventions?
I think key priorities in Africa, in the African continent, include effective implementation measures on adaptation, climate finance, on the development on ambitious NDCs, nationally determined contributions that require climate finance resources that should be accessed through bilateral and multilateral channels to have market mechanism, transparency, and so mitigation commitments should be fully respected. Therefore, mitigating efforts look like respecting key agreed aspects and milestones of the proposed climate change strategy, is about making sure that the strategy is effectively and efficiently implemented within the region. It's good to know that, by the way, ECOWAS countries' environmental ministers co-created this. Meeting with the challenge posed by global warming, I think it's also about exploring ways to transfer environmentally sound technologies to African countries, promote energy efficiency through a pole of excellence, move away from coal, dirty energies, fossil fuel, develop renewable energy, and also protect our oceans, restore forests, cover as degraded land. And finally is about international corporations. So promoting sustainable development and environmental integrity. And of course, I think this should be done with a transparent use of funds, involving strong accountability systems, mechanisms, and reliable financial monitoring and evaluation tools and framework. So to sum up, it's about using upgraded instruments to integrate climate actions on adaptation, mitigations, in national and regional development planning processes.
I suppose this is going to involve some kind of policing where the colleagues in the region are going to have to say to each other, listen, my dear brother in Ghana, you are behind in meeting our targets, our brother in Senegal, and that if they don't manage them and maybe even sanction them, this might not happen.
Yes, and I guess that's the reason why, although it may seem challenging to agree on various sets of policies, as African countries are sovereign states applying their own constitutions, the regional body, ECOWAS, for instance, has over the years grown in attempting to harmonize regional legal frameworks, and most of them are being implemented. Perhaps there needs to be a certain consistency and coherence between the application of national and regional policies. But I think this new regional climate change strategy plan is an additional articulation of the effort of this regional body to keep doing the right thing. So I think this framework aims for a regional policy that is compatible with the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, I must say that the challenges remains on effectively translating this political will into concrete actions that will serve and protect future generations. So it's also then about making sure that multi-party spaces are co-created to allow inclusive and meaningful implementation of such a strategy. Also ensure that civil society, NGOs, youth, scientists, climate impacted communities, marginalized groups, indigenous leaders are also part of this conversation and this implementation, since the strategy is calling for cooperation for regional institutions, the 15 member states of ECOWAS, their partners, and civil society actors. So you will understand that with this sort of mindset, it will be absolutely necessary for countries, I would say at the regional and even at the continental level, to build a strong solidarity around implementing these climate strategies for the better of our people and our continent.
All right, and perhaps finally, this commitment is for 10 years, but do we have 10 years in terms of climate change?
Well, the urgency is here. I think all the figures, scientists over IPCC reports, they have already set the alarm. NGOs like Greenpeace, others, civil society, climate youth, they all are concerned about this the negative effect of this climate change on our lives. So we don't have any other choice than making sure that we put in place frameworks, mechanisms, long-term financing that will allow the Mother Earth to recover, but also making sure that we also will be able to live a livable planet for future generations to come. So absolutely, 10 years sounds, let's say, short, long, depending on the actions that we have to take. But of course, we are advocating and strongly calling for urgent decision-making at a short-term, medium-term lens to sort of just save our lives, to be honest.
Yeah, we have to start and we have to move quickly. Awa Traoré, thank you so much indeed for helping us make sense of this initiative, which we are optimistic and hopeful for. Let's hope our leaders make it happen. Thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight. Good night. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Merci beaucoup.
Avio. Thank you. All right, so that's Professor Awa Traoré, who's an oceans and plastics campaigner for Greenpeace Africa. $294 billion. That's what ECOWAS has committed to fight climate change as part of a regional strategy. Well, let's wish them luck and let's hope that other parts of the continent will follow suit in regional initiatives.